Sleep well, darling? Our daughter really likes you. She wants you to be her big brother. Oh, now don't get too excited. Don't jump up and down just yet. You want to be part of this family, you gotta eat like family.
Season passes are always a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to providing additional content to new major releases, especially when you consider how players who want the full experience are often forced to pay extra for content that really should have been included at launch to begin with. The quality of DLC can greatly vary from game to game, as titles like BioShock Infinite had 2 brilliant expansion packs included with their season pass that were a real treat for fans who wanted more, while other games like Star Wars Battlefront charged a ball-busting $50 for content that really should have been with the final game to start with, and actually make playing the game worthwhile. Resident Evil 7's DLC walks a thin line between the two concepts by including bonus minigame challenge modes, trials, and narrative-focused side stories, some of which arguably should have been available to players either as additional incentives for completing the main campaign multiple times, or to be additional VHS tapes hidden around the house for the player to uncover. The big question then is whether or not there's enough here for players to sink their teeth into that justifies the price of admission, and the answer to that question is a yes, followed immediately by a not quite. Priced at $24.99 or $29.99, so far the pass includes 2 DLC packs called Banned Footage, both labeled Volume 1 and Volume 2 respectively, bringing the total of 6 additional game modes to choose from with varying degrees of replay value. The problem here is that aside from a couple of standouts like the brilliant bedroom and the story prequel Daughters, all the rest of the modes essentially boil down to quirky mini-games and survival modes, which are fun to play at first, but you'll likely never want to revisit them again after you've completed them. The first of these mini-games is Nightmare, a survival mode that puts players in the shoes of the ill-fated Suigator's cameraman Clancy as he attempts to survive for 4 hours until the morning. Similar to the Nazi Zombies mode from Call of Duty, this mode tasks the player with earning points or scrap to use to buy new weapons, perks, unlock new areas, and even activate traps littered around the map. The only way to get more scrap is by using compactors that give you larger payouts the longer you leave them running, leading the player to have to make a tough choice on whether to opt for a quick small boost or be patient and wait for a bigger boost to buy more supplies. Sometimes the game will throw you a curveball and deactivate compactors completely or spawn Jack Baker, forcing you to have to act on the fly. But more often than not, you'll be fighting regular enemies in large numbers and in tight corridors who can gang up on you very quickly unless you're careful. It's a tough and challenging mode that can often live up to its namesake on multiple occasions, and there's a harder mode that can be unlocked for more dedicated Resident Evil players out there. But while it's a nice addition, it's a little too short to get invested in, and is ultimately a distraction at best.
That smells good, don't it? You eat all this and you can be one of us. Then I'll take those things off and you can go out and play. But you gotta eat all of it.
A great nod to the Stephen King novel Misery, Bedroom is perhaps the best mode so far and is a real treat for anyone who enjoyed the puzzles in earlier Resident Evil games, but much like myself felt that the ones in the main game in 7 were a little too easy. Once again in the shoes of Clancy, the player is tasked with trying to escape the upstairs bedroom by using various objects and their wits to solve puzzles, combine items, and gain clues as to how to escape without Marguerite noticing what you're up to. What makes this mode superb is the fact that the player has to act as quickly and as quietly as possible to solve all these puzzles, and if the player makes too much noise or doesn't return to bed in time, they'll get a visit from a very angry Marguerite, who then scours the room for anything that's been left out of place. If the player has left anything in the wrong place or not put it back at all, they will either take a large amount of damage or be killed and will have to start over. Alternatively, you can even hilariously forego the escaping altogether and make Clancy willingly eat Marguerite's home cooking. But of course, if you decide to do this, it won't end very well for you at all, and doing this twice will eventually kill you. It's a real head scratcher that will take a few tries to work out, and some of the solutions to the puzzle are really clever in a way that really has to make you think hard about what items to use and where. Having to do this as quietly as possible also creates a large level of tension, giving a feeling of weight to every move that you make, causing you to think twice before picking up an item to use it and what its consequences will be. But once this mode has been completed, there are no incentives to want to do it again, meaning its replay value is pretty much non-existent. Remixing item placements or providing additional difficulties could have really helped fix this issue, but unfortunately there's nothing else to unlock once you've beaten it, leaving its potential feeling completely wasted. The next game on the list is a sadistic game of blackjack called 21, hosted by the twisted and creative Lucas Baker, and once again starring Clancy and a new character that goes by the name Hoffman. It's essentially blackjack if it were invented by the jigsaw killer from the movie Saw, with the same rules as a regular game, but with extra cards thrown in to mix up the game's rules and allow you to manipulate them to your advantage. There's not a lot that can really be said about this one, except that watching the stakes rise from losing fingers to being electrocuted to then being face to face with a spinning death blade is what makes this game mode worth playing. And even though the guy is a sick and twisted man, Lucas's personality really shines through here and can even at times be funny, even if in a really dark sense. The most interesting one from a story perspective, Daughters lets players witness firsthand the Baker family's rapid descent into madness at the hands of the malevolent Evelyn, which tragically ends up being caused by their own act of kindness towards her. The main thing that really makes this mode stand out is the way that you get to see how they were as a normal family before everything takes a dark turn, showcasing them in a far more sympathetic light than anything else shown in the main storyline. Jack is the caring and compassionate man of the house, while Marguerite loves to cook and look after her family. Lucas is just your average rebelling son who complains and whines as he has to give up his old bed to somebody else. It's a short little side story that only lasts for about 30 minutes at best, but what it does to humanize these otherwise psychotic people and actually make you sympathize with them is brilliant in a number of ways. The fact that you take the role of family member Zoe as she's forced to watch the people that raised her from birth become Evelyn's evil puppets goes a long way to making her tale far more tragic and relatable. It also causes the choice that the player has to make at the end of the main game that much harder to make. The mansion itself, whilst in a state of disrepair due to the storm caused by Evelyn's outburst on the tanker, is also in a far more livable condition, with notable differences being the fixed dining hall staircase and the complete lack of any scorpion or snake locked doors. It would have been nice to be able to check out other parts of the house before shit hit the fan, but regardless, it's still fun to explore and spot the various differences between this version and compare it to the one encountered by Ethan. There are multiple endings to the story that the player will have to work out by themselves, and it won't be immediately obvious as to what you have to do to get the true ending. But thankfully, if you do get stuck, there are various hints and tips that are shown to you after each ending and on loading screens, which can help guide you on the true path. It's at this point where things take a turn from mouldy and disgusting to the completely wild and zany. Jack's 55th birthday party is a hilariously over-the-top segue into a far more light-hearted and arcade-style experience that changes the dark and grim tone of the game completely. The objective here is to hunt around various locations for food and drink that you use to feed Jack Baker, who's waiting patiently for the player at a table complete with comedy glasses, party hat, and clown nose. Instead of surviving for as long as you can, you have to feed Jack as fast as possible by scavenging around the map for cakes, champagne, chicken dinners, beer, all of which can be fed to Jack for points and can be combined with items like cheese, pepper, and sugar for bonus points. You also have a time limit that you will need to keep track of in order to earn the highest rank for each round, and if anything, this mode is the most similar to the classic Mercenaries mode found in Resident Evils 4 and 5. You can even earn time back by killing molded monsters by using various weapons, and even find special weapons hidden around the map that shoot an infinite supply of laser bullets. All of your weapons fire confetti, and each of the molded are wearing different funny hats, which is absolutely hilarious, especially as most, if not all of them, don't fit them properly. It's honestly one of the funniest modes of the entire game, and it easily shines as one of the best of the DLC, scratching that itch for players who long for the score attack style of Mercenaries mode, even if it's not a true successor to it. The final piece of the DLC puzzle will no doubt be a welcome addition for the truly masochistic gamer that craves a challenge. Titled Ethan Must Die, this mode tests the player in ways that the main game doesn't by throwing everything it's got at the player and then scoffs at you while it sits back and watches you suffer. You start with a knife and 12 item slots, meaning that you have to find other weapons and items in boxes littered in various locations around the map. All of them have different item rarity ranks, meaning they'll drop potentially better loot, and all have the potential to randomly explode upon opening, killing you instantly if you're too close. It's a risk versus reward system that forces the player to either go without or risk it all for supplies, putting the player constantly on edge whenever they find a new box, and is especially cruel to players who are in desperate need of ammunition with only a knife left at their disposal to open boxes with. Item location and what comes out of each box is also randomized each time you retry, meaning that no two playthroughs will be the same, and it forces you to have to think quickly on your feet, especially when you have to make do with what you have until you can find something better. Much like Doom's Ultra Nightmare mode, each time you die a statue marks your last resting place, and if the player manages to make it back to that same point on their next life, they can destroy the statue and recover an item that they'd had previously. It's a brutal mode that tests dedicated players' mettle to the max, and is only really worth tackling if you've already aced Madhouse mode, or if you have the patience or skill to see it through to the end showdown with Marguerite. It will likely hold most players' interests over until completion, but the lack of any real reward for doing this takes away any incentive to play through it again.
Come on now. Eat up. I made that just for you. Don't worry. I'll be back real soon.
Resident Evil 7's banned footage DLC is a bit of a mixed bag. It provides fans with more of what they love, but at the same time it leaves them unable to fully shake the feeling that this content should really have been part of the main game in some way. We love the fact that we get more of this amazing game to play, and that Capcom has provided us with a bigger insight into all of these characters' stories. However, at the same time, it's hard not to look at this collection of add-ons and not feel a little bit disappointed or wishing that there were more. There's still the free DLC Not a Hero that may or may not star a returning character that could hopefully shed more light on some of the unanswered questions posed at the end of the game. But we still don't know when exactly that will likely surface, only that it's in the spring and that it's coming. Until then, unless you're really desperate for more Resident Evil 7, maybe wait for these packs to go down in price first, or at the very least buy it from a shop that offers a good discount for it. Both banned footage volumes are a great thing to watch. It's just a shame that there's not quite enough of it to see.